Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for this session today. I'm John Still. I'm head of content at ExchangeWire. We cover the worlds of media marketing and e-commerce. And I am delighted to be talking about what's next for AdTech today, one of my favorite subjects, a bit of future gazing, always interesting, and specifically what's going on in the programmatic space. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Raina Roberts from StackAdapt. Raina, welcome.
Hi, thanks. Nice to be here. Just as a quick intro, I'm Raina. I'm a sales director here at StackAdapt, which is a DSP. So we work on the demand side in the programmatic landscape. Currently at StackAdapt, I've been mainly working on the UK market, but we've also had a focus on opening up the French market this year, which has been quite exciting. And then before StackAdapt, I was at another DSP. So very much on the demand side of the programmatic landscape is where my experience lies.
Excellent. Well, I know you've got a lot to say about the topics that we're touching on today. So as we're on the final session of the day, I'll kick us right off. I'm not going to call it a comeback. We've been talking about programmatic for a long time, but it feels like it's gathering a bit more momentum again at the moment over the last year or so. And I'm just wondering if you can shed a little bit of light on why that might be, why programmatic's coming back into its own, and what's really brought it about. So fire away.
Yeah, of course. I do have my phone here just for some notes, just in case I need them. But I actually found it quite interesting when you sent me over some of the questions. I think you said there's a return in momentum for programmatic, which I thought was quite interesting. I would say probably since its inception, there's been a pretty steady and constant rise in programmatic revenue. I think the most obvious and main reason behind that is just we live in a more and more digitalized world. There's more screens, more ways of consuming content online, and where there's a digital screen, programmatic will find a way to serve against those screens. Having said that, I do think there's some very obvious recent shifts that have led to, I guess, a bigger increase in programmatic spend. I do apologize, I will be naming the C word and the B word, which is both COVID and Brexit. So just chatting about COVID, I think that's a very obvious shift to programmatic, right? Consumption habits literally changed overnight. All of a sudden, everyone was at home, needing new ways to stay entertained, stay connected with each other, also working from home, and that just opened up some huge revenue streams, notably in CTV. Right, people were watching way more shows. I think we've all been guilty of doing some binging of some shows online. The rise in audio, right? Once we kind of got sick of watching TV, a lot of people just started tapping into podcasts or even just listening to their music online. So that really changed consumption habits. At StackAdapt, kind of by sheer luck, we actually launched CTV at the beginning of 2020. And very much noticed, that was our highest revenue driver of the year. So I think that would have happened in any case, but I do think there was a big, big impact because of COVID and just people being at home all the time. The other one, I mentioned the B word. I'm sorry to bring this up. I'm sure people are really sick and tired of hearing about it, but just the economic state, right? We're starting to feel the impact of Brexit. We're feeling the impact of the war in Ukraine. We're feeling the impact of COVID. Our wallets are being tightened. Inflation rates are really high, and I think brands are noticing that as well, right? So anywhere they're spending budgets, they are scrutinizing where that's being spent. Is it driving ROI? And the beauty of programmatic is that we have heaps and heaps of data available, lots of cool ways to optimize towards those higher performers, as well as, just if something isn't working, you can quickly turn it off and you can switch towards a new channel and try something new and see how that impacts your ROI. So those are some of the kind of more recent, obvious, just cultural shifts that I think have shown an impact on programmatic. And then I also just think, at the heart of programmatic is tech, AI and ML-based technologies. The great thing about that is that it's adaptable. We're living in a world where, there's this weird dichotomy of having a really big need for privacy-first solutions while also having a high demand for personalization. So some opposing tactics there, but with programmatic being based on AI and ML-based technologies, that means we can adapt. So lots of reasons why programmatic is continuing to grow.
Yeah, and you've hit on one of the big questions that we've got coming up for 2024 in particular, which is the cookie precipice that we are all heading towards, with deprecation coming at some point during the next year. You've talked about the mountains of data that companies have now and how that's impacting programmatic, but particularly I think the point of how to marry privacy and personalization is going to be huge for the industry. How do you see that playing out?
One of my favorite topics. Again, it's this interesting mix of, when you think about programmatic, I think most people think of it being a tool that you can use data-driven marketing strategies. So now all of a sudden we're hearing privacy first, death of the cookie, post-cookie apocalypse. We're hearing all these terms that sound really scary, and I think for anyone who's new to programmatic or even programmatic players, I think for a hot second, people were kind of worried about where programmatic would fit in. But, going back to what I was saying earlier about it being based on AI and ML-based technologies means it's super adaptable. One other thing I actually want to mention about that is, this wasn't my idea. I don't know if anyone here was able to attend the first talk of the day. So you would be at the first talk and the last talk. But it was actually the speaker, and I'm sorry if you're in the crowd, I cannot remember the name, but it was someone from Relay 42, which is a CDB platform. And he made the really good point of just reminding everyone that when we're talking about the cookie deprecation, we're just talking about third-party cookies. First-party cookies are still a thing, right? Brands can still own that customer data, which will help with the personalization at the bottom of the funnel. If we're going to start at the top of the funnel, which is where probably those privacy-first solutions are going to come into play, there's lots of really cool stuff happening with contextual technology, right, where we're not using any data whatsoever, but at the same time, there are other identifiers out there. There's IP addresses, device IDs. There's now unified ramp IDs, which is kind of collecting identifiers and just anonymizing it. So it's still a very user-friendly, privacy-friendly solution. So I just wanted to mention that the cookie deprecation, yes, it's going to have an impact. We're not 100% sure how much of an impact it's going to have. But again, there are some very, very smart people who work in this industry. They're already finding alternative solutions. And I think everything's going to be okay.
So not all doom and gloom for next year, no.
Not all doom and gloom. And then just in general, just going back to the notion of privacy, this is not an official thing. This is how I like to think about it. There's kind of micro contextual solutions, and then there's macro contextual solutions, right? So lots of cool technologies, whether it's matching specific keywords or technology that enables the bidders to understand the general context in order to target your users and your relevant audience, again, without relying on data in real time based on the content that they're consuming. So that's what I like to refer to as micro contextual solutions. There's lots of macro contextual solutions, which again maybe isn't the right term. That's just how I think about it in my head. Which is just those wider environmental contextual triggers, right? There's really cool technologies these days. You can target based on the weather in someone's city. There's new formats like digital out of home, right, which is a one-to-many targeting tactic and format, but you can still apply contextual thinking to it, right? If we want to target bankers, we're going to target bank in London, or if we want to target people while they're traveling or on their commute, we can target the tube stations and train stations and airports and things like that. So without necessarily being super hyper-targeted to one individual, there are a lot of really cool things coming out in the programmatic sector to still reach that relevant audience and still give them a really unique, interesting, cool brand experience.
Yeah, I want to take that a little bit further, I think, in terms of the platforms that programmatic is really pushing at the moment. We've had CTV, out of home, some traditionally been known as brand awareness plays rather than genuinely quantifiable return on investment pieces. How is that changing? How is that going to work, and how are brands really playing in that space now programmatically?
Yeah, so how is that changing? I mean, I think the biggest recent change is that there's more becoming available. CTV, I usually say the UK is a little bit behind the US. You know, CTV, I mean, it's also just less segmented in the US. It's much easier to do things, but there's more and more inventory becoming available, programmatically speaking. So again, CTV and audio, there's just more ad spaces that are becoming available. Same with digital out of home. I always just say digital out of home, but there's 3 different types of out of home. There's the traditional out of home, there's digital out of home, and then there's programmatic digital out of home. As we start seeing more and more revenue going towards programmatic digital out of home, more and more inventory is going to become available, because again, it's a tool where you can move in a very agile way to make changes to your campaign instead of having to talk to all the different publishers, media owners, having all these different deals. You can access all of these things in one place now. So I think that will be one way that we'll start to see a shift for sure.
Yeah, so it's all leading towards a quite potent omni-channel approach really for brands, getting involved on a lot of different platforms. And I know you've worked on a few campaigns that have been quite successful in the area. Do you want to have a little bit of a chat about one that's worked for you? Share some stats?
Of course, I'd love to.
I knew you would.
I will apologize. We've done a recent talk together already, and I talked about the exact same campaign. So, John, you're going to hear the same stats that I've mentioned, and I am going to just look at my phone so that I don't mess up the stats. We did this campaign with one of our clients called Digital Willow. They're the agency. The end brand was Isle of Man. And they had this unique challenge where essentially they just wanted to raise awareness of how close and easy it is to get to the Isle of Man from some specific cities in the UK on these specific train lines. They had a pretty limited budget. It wasn't huge, and they essentially were just finding that all of the work they were doing through search, they just hit a bit of a ceiling. They were trying everything they could, but they just couldn't improve their results. And that's when they came to us to talk about helping them with the brand side of things to essentially help push that performance. So we did 2 campaigns. We did a digital out of home campaign where we focused on those transport screens in train stations. I can't remember all the cities, but it was, Liverpool, Manchester, kind of major cities in the UK. And all those train stations had those direct lines to Isle of Man. So we did some really cool dynamic creatives where, the city was called out in the creative. And at the same time, we did a nationwide programmatic display campaign to kind of help boost those digital out of home ads, as well as add a clickable function so that we could drive users to the websites. The really amazing thing is we work quite closely with this agency, so not only did we have programmatic results that we could look at, they also shared their search results with us, which we always love because programmatic does have an impact on those search campaigns. We just don't always have access to them. So I do have some results here to read out. The first one, which I think they were very, very happy with, which was more of a search result, the term Isle of Man increased, on the search side of things, they increased their click volume by 263% after they launched both the digital out of home and display programmatic campaigns. They also saw an improvement of 140% in CTR and 66.17% decrease in their CPA, again on their search campaign after they launched these programmatic campaigns. And the really cool one that just makes me very happy is that across all their display ads in the programmatic campaign, the areas that we were running digital out of home, because we had to be a little bit more limited with where we were running digital out of home, in all the cities that we ran digital out of home, we had the CTR on the display ads was 11% higher than the rest of the display ads across the country. So I just think that's a really cool story of how a one-to-many, non-clickable format can really help boost not only your, clickable programmatic ads, but also those search campaigns, and really help drive traffic towards that site, and then subsequently help them push that performance through their other channels.
So yeah, there's tangible, quantifiable results here that digital out of home is working really, really well, or can work really, really well for brands. Do you think that's well understood across the industry? Do you think brands and agencies really grasp the power of the medium and also the ROI aspect of it as well? Do you think there's an education piece around that and how well it works?
Yeah, one of my favorite answers is it depends. It definitely just depends on the client. There are some brands who have fully jumped into digital out of home, are investing in it, in a programmatic sense, I mean. We still talk to many clients who kind of are still afraid of it because it's not clickable, and it's the same reaction we get when we're talking about CTV, audio, in-game. These are all really high impact brand channels, but you can't click on them, and that still really makes some brands afraid because they just aren't sure how they're gonna not see a massive drop off between that branding activity and then trying to get those users to their website so they can start collecting that first party data and start introducing the personalization at the lower funnel. So it depends on who you're chatting to. Some are all over it. They're doing digital out of home, they're doing CTV, they're doing audio, they're doing in-game, and some are still very frightened. I would say for anyone who's looking to to start running on these channels, I do think there also has to be an education piece around attribution. If you're looking at a post-click, last-touch attribution model and you're gonna run digital out of home or CTV or in-game or audio, you probably won't see good results because they're non-clickable formats, and that's just a very limited way of looking at the performance of those campaigns.
Yeah.
Sorry, packed a lot into that answer right there.
No. It's I think it's fascinating, and the possibilities of digital out of home are just being scratched. The surface is just being scratched at the moment. I think we're seeing so much innovation in the area. So exciting that brands can be creative, be innovative, and also really get on top of those key metrics that the industry loves so much as well.
And can I add one thing too?
Of course.
Sorry. Going back to the notion that in this time of economic uncertainty, brands are really focusing on the performance of their budgets, which of course, right, every business has to make money, and of course if you're investing in advertising campaigns, you want to make sure they're working. Something I've been talking about quite a bit today with anyone who's kind of come over to our booth and chatted with me is you can only go so far with social and search are really good for lower funnel. I will not dispute that. But at a certain point, especially for social, where you're targeting the same people over and over and over again, you're gonna hit a ceiling, and you have to grow your brand awareness to also grow your performance campaigns. So totally understand why more budgets are going towards those lower funnel tactics during this time. I get it. But if you're not seeing performance, you might also just have to start investing a little bit more heavily in the branding side of things, and it works. Might take a little bit more time, but we're being served ads everywhere we look these days, and if you're not everywhere, other brands are, and you'll be losing out on that share of voice, and you will see the impact on your performance. So sorry, I just wanted to add that in as well.
A very valid point. On that note, actually, we're going to wrap up now, but can you give us some of your advice, your key trends, innovations that are coming up? How do brands stay ahead of the curve? How does their marketing really cut through in the next year?
Yeah, I will do my best to keep it short. I know you said wrap up. I tend to ramble a lot. I'm going to look at my notes again. Again, privacy first. I think there's probably been multiple talks on this today. If you have not thought about privacy whatsoever, start looking into contextual solutions, start looking at players who are using other identifiers, right? Not everything is cookie based. There's device IDs, IP addresses, anonymized identifiers, lots of cool stuff happening. And same with first party data. If you have no idea what your first party data strategy is, definitely get on top of it. Make sure you know which platforms you're using, and also how you can activate that first-party data across all channels. Just having and owning first-party data is not very useful if you then can't use it in a useful manner in your paid media strategies. Diversify your channel mix. again, there's a lot of really cool new channels out there that are available programmatically, and they will just continue to grow. The more screens are becoming digitalized, the more programmatic is going to find its way in. And don't be afraid of the one-to-many targeting. If you have a good creative and a product that works for your audience and you're serving to them, you will see an impact. Think about your attribution models, especially if you're going to open up to those non-clickable formats, and think about post-view, not just post-click, and just not the last touch. If you're just looking at that last touch, you might be limiting yourself. Sustainability, we actually haven't talked about sustainability at all. I thought we were going to be able to, but along with kind of privacy first and first-party solutions, there's also a big demand for just making the ad tech landscape a little bit more carbon neutral. And there are also a lot of really cool technologies that, there's still a lot of work to be done. We don't have the solution, but there's some cool players who are coming up with solutions that's being developed. And I think that's just going to be something that we hear about a lot more, especially once the cookies are deprecated, and hopefully everyone's kind of gotten over that. I think we're going to go back to hearing a lot more about kind of green solutions. And then when it comes to personalization of ads, I think the gamification of ads and kind of how you're making those ads interactive in order to kind of get that first-party data, right? What value are you bringing to your users, whether it's through your website or through your ads, to make them want to engage with you? I think we're going to see a lot of like gamified ads, interactive, dynamic, DCO. These are all things we're hearing about quite a bit, and I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon.
Cool. Well, a lot to look forward to, it seems. A lot for brands to think about, a lot of food for thought for marketers, and how to get involved in an omni-channel approach and where programmatic can really help. Raina, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your questions.
No worries, and thank you all very much for joining us. Have an excellent evening, enjoy happy hour or the journey home. Take care.